It's my pleasure to kick off this shares evening by presenting Diurnal. Diurnal is a revenue-generating biotech. We listed on AIM in 2015. Our current share price is 55p, and we have a market cap of around £67 million. We reported our cash position at our financial year end, 30th of June 2020, in a strong position, 15.4 million, and we have no debt. We have a strong group of long-standing investors, including IP Group, Polar Capital, Amati, and Chelverton, and we have a management team that has taken products through to exit in the pharmaceutical space. So in terms of our investment summary and the area that we're focused on endocrinology. When I say endocrinology, that's hormone therapeutics. We're targeting one particular segment of that market, and that segment is our diseases of cortisol deficiency, and we believe that's an opportunity worth in excess of $3 billion per annum. We're targeting this opportunity with two products. Our first product is Alkindi. It's already launched and generating revenues in Europe, and at our last financial year end, we've generated £2.4 million in revenue. Alkindi is approved in Israel and also in Australia, and has been submitted for review in the US, and that approval is imminent. Our second product is primarily focused at adults with the same diseases. The product is Chronocourt, and that is currently undergoing review in Europe with the European Medicines Agency, and we're anticipating approval early in 2021. For both of these products, we have strong commercial exclusivity until 2034, and that's based on orphan drug designations, which we hold across the globe, and also our wholly owned Diurnal patent portfolio. Finally, we have an earlier pipeline that is maturing, and our third product, DiTest, which is an oral native testosterone product, is in clinical development, targeting a very large male hypogonadism or low testosterone market. And we have recently received feedback from the FDA, which has shown us a route, an abbreviated route to US approval, which has been agreed. So with those attributes, it's our vision to become a world-leading endocrinology specialty pharma company. And this is our endocrine-focused development pipeline. And for followers of the Diurnal story, hopefully you'll have seen over the months and years that we've been presenting with shares that the Gantt chart keeps moving to the right, and we're progressing our products towards approval and commercialization. So in terms of the opportunity, why are we interested in the endocrine space, and what is it? Well, the endocrine system is critical to life. It's a collection of glands that produce hormones that regulate a number of important functions in the body, including metabolism, growth, sexual function, and reproduction. And if you are lacking a hormone, either through disease, through ill health, or through genetic causes, then this leads to chronic conditions which are often require lifelong treatment and have serious health impacts on patients. Of course, the hormonal disease that we all know about is diabetes, and the hormone is insulin, and that's an area dominated by large pharmaceutical companies. However, if, like Diurnal, you speak to clinicians outside of the diabetes space, then there's a multitude of diseases where patient needs are going unmet. And it is on this area, on the right-hand side of the Venn diagram on slide 9, that Diurnal operates. And typically in this area, it's a low competitive area. Usually you may have one or two companies picking off a particular disease and developing therapeutics within that disease area. But I think it shows that there can be really meaningful returns made for companies using this approach, and some of the comparative companies are listed here. I'll now focus in on our lead products, Alkindi and Chronocourt. But before I do that, I just want to say a few words about the diseases that we're targeting and these really unmet needs that patients face. So we're targeting diseases of cortisol deficiency. Cortisol is an essential hormone for life. Without it, you will die. And unfortunately for patients that cannot produce cortisol, they'll need to be replaced with a cortisol replacement therapy for the rest of their lives. Cortisol deficiency results in fatigue, depression, and you're always at risk of death through what's called an adrenal crisis. There are two main forms of adrenal insufficiency. The first is when you lose the ability to produce cortisol during your lifetime. This is called adrenal insufficiency, and the typical symptoms here are chronic fatigue. 50% of patients can't work, and they are at risk of these adrenal crises. The second group of diseases is congenital adrenal hyperplasia, or CAH. This is caused by a genetic defect, a block in an enzyme that presents at birth that prevents patients from producing cortisol. And these patients have the issue of the chronic fatigue that the adrenal insufficiency patients have, but they also have an additional complication in that the building blocks of cortisol, the androgens or sex hormones, testosterone-like molecules, cannot be converted to cortisol and buzz around the patient's body, causing harm. So, for example, if you're a little girl that's born with congenital adrenal hyperplasia, you may be born with ambiguous genitalia, which may require corrective surgery during your lifetime. Both little boys and little girls go through puberty very early on in life, perhaps the ages of 5 or 6, so grow very quickly as young children. But when it comes to the teenage years where puberty should occur, actually growth is turned off, so they end up being much shorter than normal in adulthood, and they continue to have problems in terms of metabolism, fertility, cardiovascular issues, and ultimately these patients will die some 7 years earlier than the normal population. So these diseases are associated with high morbidity and higher mortality, and it's Diurnal's goal to effectively treat these patients for the first time, initiating with Alkindi from birth and then progressing onto Chronocourt for the rest of the lifelong treatment. As I mentioned before, the competitive landscape is very favourable for our products. In terms of our lead indication in congenital adrenal hyperplasia, we have no competitors in Europe and just a handful in the US. And actually, over the past 6 months, one of our competitors in the US has dropped out. That's Milendo, due to lackluster clinical trial results. And in a wider indication of adrenal insufficiency, we only have one European competitor and no competitors in the US. So in terms of our product, Alkindi, we believe that this is a major breakthrough in pediatric adrenal insufficiency, and it's the first licensed pediatric treatment for adrenal insufficiency, including the genetic disease. And it's the first product that's specifically been developed for children that's been approved in over 60 years. And we really have first mover advantage in the pediatric setting. And you can see why these are examples of unlicensed medicines here that you can see on slide 13 that have been used in the marketplace before our approval. And we really think that we can make a difference with Alkindi, not only in Europe, but around the rest of the world. So Alkindi, as I mentioned, is approved in Europe. It was approved in 2018 and successfully launched in the UK, Germany, and Austria. And in this most recent financial year, we have further launches in Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Iceland, and Italy. And we've also had the pricing agreed in the Netherlands. And I'm very pleased to say that we've achieved premium pricing over generic in all of these territories, even tough to get to pricing in territories such as Italy. We have market access plans in place for a timely launch across other key European territories. And for those territories that are smaller or geographically challenging, we have put distribution agreements in place. And just last month, we signed distribution agreements with Consilient and Goodlife for the Benelux countries and with an undisclosed partner for Switzerland. In the US, we've taken a different approach. We believe that the optimal way to commercialize Alkindi, or Alkindi Sprinkle, as it will be known in the US, is through licensing, and we've licensed Alkindi Sprinkle to Eton Pharmaceuticals, which is a US-listed specialty pharma company on NASDAQ. We're delighted to have Eton Pharmaceuticals on board. Eton's pharmaceuticals expertise is very much focused on hospital-based and pediatric products, and Alkindi very much hits the sweet spot of that. And if approved and commercialized successfully, this could be one of Eton's biggest selling products in the US. The collaboration was announced in March of this year and just covers the commercialization of Alkindi. Diurnal is responsible for development and registration of Alkindi, and up to and after registration, then Eton will be responsible for pricing, launch, and marketing. In terms of the agreement that we announced in March of this year, we have now received a $5 million non-refundable upfront payment that consisted of $3.5 million in cash, which was received, and $1.5 million in Eton stock, which since March has approximately doubled. So we're sitting on close to $3 million worth of Eton stock. There is a further $2.5 million milestone, which will come on approval of Alkindi with orphan drug status. And beyond that, we have sales-based milestone payments and tiered royalties ranging from low double digits to high teens percentage on annual sales. And as I mentioned up front, we are anticipating imminent news. What we anticipate will be the approval of Alkindi Sprinkle in the US. We've been set a PDUFA date or expected approval date by the FDA, the 29th of September 2020. So that's less than 2 weeks away. In terms of Chronocourt, which is the treatment primarily for adults with the same diseases, the treatment requirements for adults are different to those than in children. In healthy individuals, the cortisol rhythm is a very distinct rhythm about the day, which is shown here in orange. It's low at night, enabling you to get to sleep. It then begins to rise from around 3 o'clock in the morning, peaking on or just before waking, and then gradually decreases throughout the day. And clinicians have recognized the importance of this rhythm in treating these diseases of cortisol deficiency, and have tried to approximate the rhythm with current treatment regimens. There are no standard treatment regimens available to treat congenital adrenal hyperplasia, and those that do certainly do not replicate the natural rhythm of cortisol about the day. Importantly, for these other treatments, there is no overnight coverage of cortisol. So if you look at the shaded area here with the moon, you can see that there is no overnight cortisol coverage with these other treatment regimens. And this is really important for our congenital adrenal hyperplasia patient group. It is also during the night that these androgens, these sex hormones, rise and cause damage to the body. So on current treatment, by the time you've taken your morning medication, it's already too late. Your androgens are sky high, and the damage has been done to your body, and that pattern is repeated day in, day out for the rest of your life. So Diurnal came up with Chronocourt. You can see the capsules here on the right-hand side of slide 16, which is taken in what we call a toothbrush regimen. So the capsules are taken lasting at night, first thing in the morning. And the features of Chronocourt are that it has a delayed release coat, which delays release of hydrocortisone, the active ingredient, for 2 or 3 hours. Then the hydrocortisone begins to release and be absorbed gradually, giving you that peak on waking that you need, matching physiology. And then you take a second dose first thing in the morning, which then provides cortisol coverage for the rest of the day. So when we tested Chronocourt in congenital adrenal hyperplasia patients, we took patients on all different types of steroid treatment regimen, and at best only 31% had their androgens in the optimal range in the morning. We switched those patients onto Chronocourt, and after 6 months treatment, 94% of patients had their androgens into the optimal range. So we took this program forward into a pivotal phase 3 study, and that phase 3 study has actually underpinned our market authorization application, or MAA, in Europe, and we recently presented that data at the Endocrine or Endo conference in June of this year, so I won't go into that in any detail here. Safe to say that we also have a safety extension study ongoing with Chronocourt that has shown the continued benefits of Chronocourt in the long term, with the retention rate of patients remaining very high in this study, over 80%, and we continue to see unexpected therapeutic benefit with Chronocourt in terms of reduced fatigue in patients, periods returning in women, patient and patient partner pregnancies. So with that, we anticipate the European market authorization to undergo the EMA review. We are under review now, and we anticipate EMA approval towards the end of Q1 21. Slide 18 just gives a snapshot of the key value inflection points coming up over the next 3 years, both in Europe and in the US with our key products. And in terms of Alkindi and Chronocourt outside of our key markets of Europe and the US, we've already engaged and entered into marketing and distribution agreements in Australia and New Zealand with Emerge Health, and in Israel with Medison. And I'm pleased to say that we announced recently that we have now had approvals of Alkindi in both of those territories, and we anticipate first revenues during 2021. In terms of our earlier stage pipeline, we're beginning to build this out. We have a number of earlier stage opportunities which are at preclinical stage, including treatments for hypothyroidism and Cushing's disease. But I'd just like to highlight the recent activity in the treatment of hypogonadism, so that's low testosterone in men, with our DITEST native oral testosterone product. So at the end of 2019, we announced positive data from our DITEST phase 1 clinical study in the target patient population of 24 hypogonadal men here in the UK. The primary endpoint of the study was met, and DITEST was shown to achieve testosterone levels within a healthy young male adult normal range. We also had a comparator in the study, and we showed that DITEST testosterone replacement was less variable than other oral testosterone products, the testosterone undecanoate, and several of the secondary endpoints also proved to be superior. So this was a very pleasing and significant result for the company. We've now taken and shared this data with the FDA in the US, and we held a pre-IND meeting with the FDA in June of this year. And the output of that meeting was that we can progress the DITEST program through to market approval in the US by the abbreviated 505(b)(2) route. This is a specialist route in the US where Diurnal can rely not only on its own data, but also on bibliographical and historical data, and thereby de-risking the program both financially and in terms of time. And in terms of how that program can look moving forward, in discussions with the FDA indicated that we just need 2 further clinical trials before we can apply for approval in the US and target that very significant hypogonadal market. So in terms of summary and outlook, I won't go through these in detail, but again, if you follow Diurnal, we set out our milestones around this time last year. As a company, I'm delighted to say that the staff working extremely hard, and also in these uncertain times, we've hit all our key milestones. And in terms of the outlook, looking forward, clearly the PDUFA date for Alkindi Chronocourt is coming up in the next few days. We then have anticipated first sales of Alkindi around the end of the year, followed by approval of Chronocourt in Q1 21, and then submission of further DITEST clinical program submissions with the FDA towards the end of Q2 2021. So to summarize, we're building a global endocrinology specialty pharma company. We've established a strong base in orphan diseases. We have a credible market access strategy that's generating revenues for the company. We have the opportunity to broaden the offering with our strong pipeline, and importantly, a strong team with the ability to deliver.